Hello, I'm Lynn Ware, and today I'd like to talk with students and parents about reading notes on the staff. When students come into the basic or intermediate or advanced rudiments, we're assuming that they do have knowledge of reading the notes in treble clef and in bass clef. The majority of students play the piano, however, we do get a fair number of students who do not. They may play the flute, the guitar, the violin, and they're less familiar in bass clef. Because of what we are going to be emphasizing with our theory, reading notes in thirds, those students that are treble clef oriented entirely, they will be able to adjust quite readily to the rigors of the bass clef and the alto or the tenor clef as need be. When students begin their music studies, they begin with the circle of steps because it's simple. C, D, E, F, G, going to A, B, C, corresponding to the letters of the alphabet, which the children have been reciting for years and years and years. So they come to that very, very easily. However, for our purposes, reading notes in seconds or by steps is a very slow procedure, and we prefer that the students come to the answers more quickly through the circle of thirds, and through the circle of thirds come to the circle of fifths. When reading on the staff, we can easily see the circle of thirds. Naturally, they are line, 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 or space, space, space. Now, I'll start with the treble clef, the G clef. Basically, you're going to start above the staff with a straight line down and then circling around to identify and draw attention to this second line here known as G. Because this note is G, the other notes are going to fall into place, and we've all heard the "every good boy does fine." If we extend that series of notes to, say, one note below, we start here with C, and we can come up here and add one ledger line and call that note A. We will end up with a complete circle of thirds: C, E, G, B, D, F, A. And so that's what we want to emphasize to our students. Sometimes students are worried that if they try the circle of thirds on the spaces, that it's going to be inherently different, but in fact it's not. It's exactly the same regardless of where I start. So if I start on the spaces, D, F, A, C, E, G, B, it will also produce the circle of thirds, D, F, A, C, E, G, B. So that no matter what we do, when we move line to line or space to space, we are using the circle of thirds. We also encourage students to practice reciting the circle of thirds and reading the circle of thirds going backwards. We have one practice sheet that is not so much identifying the notes, but just a practice of reading the thirds very quickly and fluently. Reading backwards presents challenges that reading forward simply doesn't cover. So reading initially from the circle, so A, F, D, B, G, E, C, perhaps reciting that circle 10 or 20 times a day as needed to make sure those notes are in your mind, but also working with it on the staff, A, F, D, B, G, E, C. The reason this is essential is that when the students come in, perhaps a violin student who cannot read bass clef, and we come to the bass clef, I'll just do a little drawing here. The bass clef is essentially a little dot with what I call an ear in the top space coming down to the first space, and then articulated as the F clef with these two little dots, okay? That assigns this line is F, this one is the D, second line B, first line G, and top line A. If I extend downwards, below G here in the treble clef was E, so of course that will retain itself, okay? The order always retains itself. If this one was A is our top note here, so that doesn't help me much, but according to our circle of thirds, after the A, we're following F, A, we have the C. So when a violinist comes into the class and we ask them to note read in bass clef, they can certainly start with a ledger. This line, they can always look at this. This is F. Because that is F, this is E. Now we're on a space. We're prepared to move down the circle of thirds from the note E. Below E is C. Below the C is the A. And below the A is the F. So we ask them to use that circle of thirds to identify the notes of the additional clefs. Now, it's not required for basic or intermediate rudiments, but advanced rudiments on the first class will also be asked to read clefs such as the tenor and alto clef. Those two clefs are C clefs, and they're rarely used, but it is one of the challenges of advanced rudiments. You can begin making a C clef. There's fancy versions in the music. However, we can make a C clef simply drawing a vertical line down. This is the alto clef, and then doing essentially a type of K. That places the middle C there. A is below, F is below, E above, and G on the top line. And again, what really is going to come to our rescue is the circle of thirds. What happens if I have to read a note in alto clef that is way up here? If I've forgotten the names of my lines, I can always revert to the C here, C, E, G, B, and feel confident that I've reached the note. Certainly, I think by now you can see that it would be helpful if the student did remember the names of the lines of each staff as at least a helper. Perhaps F here and even G here as two markers. The lowest note here being G, the lowest note here being the F. And when we go to tenor clef, we place our C here. Our E is the top line, our A, our F, and our D. For instance, I would count up C, E, G, and achieve the proper note name in this fashion. When we move in thirds, we are essentially counting in thirds on the staff. And I have yet to speak to you about counting on the staff, equally important as the circle of thirds. As we move line to line, we use our pencil and we put our pencil on the first note, say it is C, our lowest note, and we move line to line. That is the interval of a third. If I move to the next line, it's the fifth. So that I tend to move line to line to line, counting 1, 3, 5, 7. As opposed to counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is very cumbersome. If students are able to count with their pencils on that first lesson, they will be able to see the intervals very, very quickly. And the same thing applies to the spaces, so that 1, 3, 5, as I move from space to space. I can also count backwards. If I look at a note and say, okay, that's scale degree 5, where is scale degree 1? The same technique will work. So I start on a high C and I say 5, 3, 1. If C is scale degree 5, then F is scale degree 1. Now, you might ask yourself, what happens if I need an odd number? What if the number is 4? What if the number is 6? We still continue to count in odd numbers. However, we add 1 and we simply switch. If it was originally a line, we switch to the space above. If it was originally a space, we switch to the line above. So in this case, 1, 3, and then draw the note on this space above for scale degree 4. If I need scale degree 6, I would count 1, 3, 5, and draw the note on the space above. So that's how we count on the staff. Counting on the staff, like I said, can also be done backwards. If I say this is scale degree 8, where is scale degree 6? If this is 8, this is scale degree 6. Where is scale degree 4? It's here. Where is scale degree 2? It's here. So 8, 6, 4, 2. So that's how we count on the actual staff.